The Supreme Court's decision striking down the administration's tariff framework landed in the middle of a crowded stretch on Capitol Hill, where talks to end the DHS partial shutdown have turned to carving agencies out for standalone funding. Lawmakers are also weighing everything from reconciliation plans to aviation safety and the latest FISA fight. We break down what to watch in the days ahead with WTOP's Capitol Hill correspondent, Mitchell Miller. Mitchell, thanks for joining me.
You bet.
Both chambers of Congress were on recess last week, but that didn't mean it was quiet on the Hill. Big Supreme Court decision on Friday overturning the president's global tariff framework. What does that mean for Congress? We were starting to see some votes in opposition to specific tariffs. What do you think will happen now?
Well, this really changes the whole tenor, I think, of this week. You have the State of the Union coming up, and we'll talk about that. But the fact that this ruling came from the Supreme Court on Friday really set in motion a lot of different things for a lot of lawmakers. First of all, there was quick reaction, of course, from the people who have been saying for a long time, including Virginia Senator Tim Kaine, a Democrat, that these are taxes, that they shouldn't have been imposed, that it is Congress that has to put into effect most tariffs, if not almost all of them. Certainly the president can do some of them, but the argument from many who criticized the president's tariffs from Congress was that this is just usurping the power of Congress. So there was obviously a lot of cheering from Democrats, a lot of criticism from Republicans who say this undermines the president's executive power. But nonetheless, it does indicate that there are going to be some changes in connection with tariffs. I'm sure there will be lots of different types of legislation, executive orders from the president, and there's going to be a lot of back and forth. So this is far from over. But keep in mind that last year, the House essentially voted to keep itself from taking up any type of legislation related to tariffs. And that only expired this year. And it was earlier this month that the House actually voted to allow for something to take place in connection with tariffs. In this case, it was to lift tariffs on Canada as 6 Republican congressmen joined with Democrats. So there is a lot to unpack here, of course, but it certainly changes things here on the Hill for sure.
One of the things that wasn't included in the decision was whether or not the administration has to unwind the tariffs, refund the tariffs that it's already collected. The number I saw there was $134 billion over 2025. As we're still in discussions about 2026 appropriations, do you think that that will have an impact on how the conversations go?
Ultimately, I do. I mean, this is one of the most profound actions the Supreme Court has taken in recent years. And this is so complicated, as we saw from various explanations over the weekend about how to unwind these tariffs. I mean, these are tariffs that literally stretch around the world to enemies and allies. And a lot of companies, of course, are dealing with the impact of tariffs and will be looking to take potentially legal action to try to get their money back.
Well, where do you think that puts us then in terms of the State of the Union?
Well, this is going to be really interesting. For one thing, at the State of the Union, the president is going to be speaking with many of the Supreme Court justices right in front of him. So that will be interesting just from a theatrical standpoint. But then you also have the fact that this will be the only State of the Union address ever made where part of the government was actually shut down. And this is something that the president has said he was not really that concerned about in the days leading up to the State of the Union address. But there's no question that there are some Republicans who are a little bit nervous about the optics of this, having part of the government shut down while the president's trying to outline the State of the Union, literally. What this means in terms of resolving this battle over funding for the Department of Homeland Security is really unclear. I mean, you had this whole week last week where Congress was out and there was just a little bit back and forth, but really no progress related to getting anything done. So it's going to be interesting to see whether or not lawmakers try to parse out some of these pieces of legislation, as we've talked about previously, where they might try to fund FEMA and try to fund TSA. But that seems to be pretty complicated at the moment. So this is going to be yet another big week for Congress and the president.
Well, Leader Jeffries has said that he's encouraging the Democrats to attend and behave themselves or attend alternative programming. What do you think? What do you think the audience will be like?
That's right. He really kind of wants the Democrats to sit on their hands. They can protest quietly, but he does not want to cause an incident, as happened in the last speech by the president to the House, where Congressman from Texas, Al Green, got up and yelled and really got a lot of negative reaction related to that from Democrats and Republicans, frankly. So the other thing is there will be this alternate event on the National Mall, including Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, among other lawmakers, where they just say they are protesting the president's policies. They want to provide this alternate event. So we'll see what happens with that. I think it's going to be a very interesting State of the Union, probably one of the most interesting we've seen in many years.
I'm speaking with Mitchell Miller. He's Capitol Hill correspondent for WTOP. Well, Mitchell, in addition to all of that high theater, there are Republicans that are pushing for another reconciliation mega bill in 2026. What would they put in it? And who's on board with that?
Well, that's a really good question. There are a variety of things that they might include. There are some House Republicans on the conservative side who really want to get things in that would deal with economic issues, affordability issues, perhaps lowering the threshold in connection with mortgages, also streamlining a lot of the permitting process in connection with a variety of businesses, and also getting in there some energy legislation, as well as some talk about bringing back some health care provisions, including an HSA of some type and different types of savings accounts. But it's really right now just a lot of ideas, and there is also opposition to this within the Republican Party, in part because the margin, of course, in the House, as we've talked about many times, is so thin that for House Speaker Mike Johnson to get a 2.0 through the House would be very, very difficult. And do Republicans in a midterm election year, do they want to show how hard it is for them to struggle to get legislation, and ultimately what happens if it doesn't pass? So I don't know that that's actually going to move forward, but we're certainly going to hear more talk about it.
It seems like it would take the place of conversations that need to happen on a lot of other legislation. Let's talk about dueling aviation safety bills.
Yeah, this is really interesting. So tonight, there is scheduled to be a vote in the House on what's called the Rotor Act. This has been pushed very hard by Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, who heads the Commerce Committee in the Senate. The Senate really has bipartisan support in connection with this, and it would essentially streamline a lot of the safety measures that are many lawmakers just feel that they are allowing various loopholes for the military, for example, to get away with not necessarily utilizing all the safety technology that is there. Now, on the other hand, in the House, some of the committee chairs have their own legislation that they say, wait a second, we're getting kind of blindsided here. We didn't know that the House was actually going to vote on this Senate bill so quickly this week. So we'll have to see what happens with that little tussle. But for now, House Speaker Mike Johnson has indicated that this House vote on the Rotor Act will go forward tonight.
Another bill that's getting a lot of attention is extending the FISA coverage.
Yeah, and this is an interesting one, too, because really the push is coming from a handful of lawmakers on the Republican side, as well as the White House. This is from Stephen Miller, the White House domestic policy advisor. He really wants this spying statute under what's called Section 702 of FISA to be extended so that it can be allowed to collect information on non-citizens abroad, overseas, without a warrant. Now, some people think that this would go too far. There's been opposition to it from members of both parties, actually. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get it extended. It is yet another, frankly, legislative headache for House Speaker Mike Johnson because people have such strong feelings about this. And again, he only has that one vote margin.
Sounds like Speaker Johnson needs a big bottle of aspirin.
Certainly does.
Because he may be faced with a war powers vote this week as well.
Right, exactly. So there's been a lot of talk, of course, about what is going to happen with Iran. And now there are more moves in the House, frankly, than there used to be in connection with these war powers resolutions. Again, because of this thin margin, they can move things through a discharge petition and get things to the floor that the House Speaker doesn't necessarily want to have moved. Now, we'll have to see what happens in connection with Iran. The president can take action, of course, at any time. But it is another sign that Congress is trying to reassert itself, whether it's in connection with the tariffs, whether it in connection with war powers resolutions. It really is a changing dynamic now, knowing that the president is in his final term. It's going to be interesting to see how all these issues move forward.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be an exciting week on the Hill.
There's no doubt about that.
Mitchell Miller is Capitol Hill correspondent for WTOP. Thanks so much for joining us.
You bet.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Listen to the Federal Drive on your schedule. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.